Okay, we are here in Yukon, Oklahoma. It is Wednesday, August 26th, a little after 1 in the afternoon. You can see the sign there. We'll zoom in a bit. The Freedom Trail Park, also known as the Yukon City Park. There's a sign down there. Yukon's best, the Freedom Trail. Some signs here. But we're here to talk about the fact that across the street there, you can see it is Shedrick Elementary School. So we're here to talk about a little thing that our friend Joseph R. Biden did back in 1990. A little thing known as the Federal School Zones, the Federal Gun-Free School Zone Act of 1990. And that was Joe Biden's bill that President George H.W. Bush signed into law, and it is federal law that is in effect to this day. And what that law does, and what it did, is it created, excuse me, it created a 1,000-foot bubble around schools throughout the United States of America, primary and secondary schools. So this is a thing we're going to talk about, how there's an interplay between state and federal law and gun rights. Like I said, it is the Gun-Free School Zones Act of 1990, thanks to our dear friend Joseph R. Biden, aka Joe Biden. He's running for president, folks. So this will give you some insight into his thoughts on the Second Amendment and gun rights and some of the things that we need to be cognizant of here in Oklahoma now that we have quote-unquote constitutional carry or permitless carry. So, as you can ascertain, we have a two-lane street there between myself and the school. So I am well within the 1,000-foot bubble. I am unarmed right now, just throwing that out there. But state law in Oklahoma, under the Oklahoma Self-Defense Act, for a number of years has specified that if you had a handgun license, because prior to November 1st of last year, 2019, in order to walk around in public, be in public with weaponry, to have loaded handguns, have guns in your car, you had to have a license to do that. And state law said that if you had one in your car in a school parking lot, you could do so with a license as long as you did not get out of the car with it. But now, with permitless carry or constitutional carry, the law still says you can have a gun in your car in the parking lot of a primary school, secondary school, or even a college campus. You just can't get out of the car with it. But we have this federal law that says that if you do not have a handgun license issued by the school, by the state that the school is located in, you're breaking federal law, folks. That's federal charges, that's felony. We're talking 5 years in federal prison and a $5,000 fine if you do that. Because obviously that parking lot is within the 1,000-foot bubble. Now, how far is 1,000 feet? You know, that's over 3 football fields in length for Americans that like to measure things in terms of football fields. You know, and talking about parking lots. So we have the parking lot of this park over here, of this public park. And the 1,000-foot bubble that applies to all public property within that bubble. You know, so the sidewalk that I'm walking on, that street that cars are driving back and forth on, and by the way, this is an active school zone. If if the lights are flashing or not, if the lights are flashing, whether school is in session or not, with the pandemic, we're having virtual schools in many cases. So even if there's not actually students in that school because of virtual schooling or distance learning, if the yellow lights are blinking, you better slow down because you can still get a ticket. But what I'm getting at here is, if people were to just drive by in their car and they were to be pulled over for some reason because they're in the bubble and they don't have a handgun license, they're breaking that federal law. It doesn't apply to private property, so there are residences around here. And so if you live in one of these houses around the periphery of this school that may fall within the bubble, you are good to go on your own property. Now, if you wish to leave your property with a firearm, the federal law says that you must transport that firearm in a locked gun rack, or you must have your firearm unloaded and in a locked container for transport if you do not have a license issued by, again, the state that the school is located in. So, granted, Oklahoma has reciprocity, and we recognize and honor handgun licenses from every other state of the United States of America. But for the purposes of this federal law, only an Oklahoma handgun license will cover you. Also, as far as the Oklahoma Self-Defense Act is concerned, a military ID card is the equivalent of a handgun license for state law purposes, not for the purposes of this federal law. Okay? We must be clear about that. So keep that in mind, military service members who are in Oklahoma. Now, I am now well within this parking lot. You can see the yellow lines on the ground here. You know, many cars could potentially be parked in this area. And, you know, there's a lovely statue there. You can see the school in the background. And guess what? Still, I paced this off earlier. I am still within the 1,000-foot bubble around the school zone, but you know, the gun-free school zone, the school property. So the bubble does not begin at the school building. It's from the outer perimeter of the school property. So that's where you start, the outer bounds of the school property, and you go out 1,000 feet from that. So if there were cars in this area and someone had a firearm in that car, vehicle, bus, semi, tractor, trailer, whatever, and they did not have a state-issued handgun license, a SDA license, if you will, then they would be in violation of that law. And that, again, what are the penalties for that? It's federal charges. It's a felony. $5,000 fine, 5 years in prison, and of course, all the good things that go with felony convictions. You lose the right to vote. You lose the right to have firearms. And as Second Amendment enthusiasts, we're fans of our gun rights. And doing things that would cause you to lose them, that's not good. We want to avoid those things. So, these are some things that we really want people to be aware of and be cognizant of when you're out there. Because absolutely, constitutional carry is a great thing. But when it was sold to people, the spin doctors that pushed it out there, I'm not saying that they were being completely disingenuous, but they didn't tell you the whole story, folks. You know, there are a lot of schools out there. And if you live in urban areas, there's a lot more than, say, if you live out in rural areas. And here's another thing. There have been cases where, and particularly in rural areas, where there have been schools near areas where people have gone hunting, and hunters have run up against the bubble because it was public hunting areas. And these have been people that have been carted off to jail, and they've been charged and convicted, and now they're felons, and they have everything that goes along with that. So keep that in mind. Oh, and also, since we are on the subject of parks, and this is a park, again, if I was armed today, I would be able to carry openly or concealed here because, unlike Scissortail Park in Oklahoma City, this is a public park, not a park that is owned or operated or managed by a public trust or a nonprofit like Scissortail Park. But it is only a matter of time, folks, before liberals and Democrats have their aha moment and the light bulb goes off above their heads and they have an epiphany, if you will, and they realize that, you know what? If they just do away with their city parks and recreations departments and establish a public trust, or they just turn over those functions to a public trust or a nonprofit to specifically take care of this problem of having to deal with and look at people carrying firearms on what will still ultimately at the end of the day be public property. It will still be the people's dirt, taxpayers' dirt, folks. It's in the law. And again, people that say that they are liberty advocates, that they are the premier defenders of the Second Amendment in Oklahoma, these are the people that made this terrible, terrible slippery slope compromise. And they say they did it in the name of incrementalism, but incrementalism goes both ways. And there's a lot of parks throughout this great state of ours, folks. So again, it's only a matter of time before that happens. And you know what? I am actually, and this is me saying it right now, I'm actually advocating for city councils to do just that. Start turning some public parks over to nonprofits and public trusts. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's see how many we can have that are turned over that way. Let's get rid of some open carry across the state of Oklahoma. How many can we do before people realize what a terrible mistake it was to enact that terrible, terrible compromise in the first place? Really, for gun rights in Oklahoma, that was our 3/5 compromise. And you know, how long before we wake up and realize we never should have done it in the first place? And again, you know, we didn't have to do it. We did not have to do it. So how long and how many parks need to fall by the wayside before we wake up and realize that we need to correct this legislatively and remove that passage from the Self-Defense Act so that public property is public property is public property. And again, you know, let's harken back to the thankfully failed House Bill 3010 from last session that said that if some organization were to receive a permit to have an event of some sort here on this dirt I'm standing on right here, that if they wanted to simply say no open carry, then that is how it would be. And if someone were to show up within the bounds of their event zone and they were unwilling to cover up their firearm on public property, then they could be drug away to jail. Think about that, folks. Think about that. Ridiculous, unconstitutional. You know, talk about fascism. Terrible, terrible, terrible. So these are the kind of things we need to be on the lookout for. Forewarned is forearmed. Pay attention to what's going on in not just the state legislature here in Oklahoma, but whatever state you happen to be in. Actually look at these bills, read them, see what they say, understand what they will actually do. Follow the bill through the entire legislative process, because some of these people are sneaky, shyster, snake in the grass individuals who completely abuse the legislative process. They make a mockery of it by they'll have one bill written a certain way. They'll get it through the committee process, and then once it goes to the floor for a floor vote, they sneak in a floor amendment that will completely change the essential nature of the bill and what it actually does, which was the case with House Bill 3010, which resulted in it passing in under 3 minutes with people voting on a thing that they had no conception of what it was or what it did. So there you have it. So, once more, the Federal Gun-Free School Zones Act of 1990, 5 years in prison, $5,000 fine, applies to all public property within a 1,000-foot bubble around schools, even if you are in your vehicle, sitting in a parking lot, or just driving past the school. So think about that. If you are, driving by and you don't have a handgun license issued from Oklahoma by the OSBI, and who knows what you did, definitely keep that in mind. If it's late at night, during the day, you see the red and blue lights come on, and the police want to pull you over, don't pull over in this park, don't pull over anywhere near a school, because who knows if they want to hit you with those additional charges or not. So we'll leave it at that, folks. This is Adrian Otap. Support the Oklahoma Open Carry Association, and of course support the work that I do. Follow me on YouTube, youtube.otap.com, and of course Patreon, patreon.otap.com. We appreciate everything you do to keep me out here making these videos and covering different political events and rallies and whatnot. So we'll leave it at that, and appreciate the feedback. Please like and share these videos, and drop some hints and suggestions on other events you'd like me to carry and cover. And that's it. OTAP out.